Welcome to ETF TV, your insight into the world of exchange-traded funds, issuers, and investment. I'm Margareta Hricova, and joining me today is Cullen Rogers, Chief Investment Officer at Wedbush Fund Advisors, and Deborah Fuhr. Welcome, Cullen and Debbie.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Cullen, great to see you. From your perspective as a portfolio manager, how are advisors and institutional investors thinking about thematic ETFs today as opposed to a few years ago?
I think thematic ETFs have changed a lot. I think when you look back 10 years ago, as an active mutual fund managers, we used them a lot almost as like short-term proxy exposure. And I think as money has leaked out of mutual funds into ETFs and the complex has become more and more complex, not only have you seen portfolio management tools get more robust and have the ability to add in, I think, more levers, advisors want those levers and the retail market wants those levers. And I think when you combine those two demand drivers, you get this incredible influx of tools that advisors can put in their tool chest. I will say that there was this great rush of ticker first, strategy later type thematic ETFs that had their time in the sun, and it's kind of shifted. I think you've really got to put the proof in the pudding when it comes to thematic ETFs of creating real slices of exposure or structurally different slices of exposure as opposed to just, a gimmicky kind of tagline. But I think they'll continue to be used more and more. I mean, there's only so many ways we can slice and dice the investment universe, but I think investors, and especially the retail market that doesn't do as much individual security analysis, they need these type of core satellite structures so they can get exposure to these long-term thematic secular moves across the market, like AI with IVEs. I think you always have to look for places that the market doesn't have exposure to, and investors and sponsors alike are looking for ways to get access to those.
How does Wedbush Fund Advisors approach ETF launches differently from many of the newer issuers entering the market? And how should investors think about the broader roadmap for Wedbush ETFs beyond IVEs?
Well, I think a couple of ways. First of all, Wedbush being a 70-year-old firm kind of gives us a unique position when it comes to looking at ETFs. We have resources at our disposal. We have a lot of different segments that we're articulating into the market with investment banking and research, and all these other different pieces that you kind of attract over 70 years. And I think that gives us a tremendous amount of discipline. We have time. I think the market is so crowded right now and people are all rushing in that, like I said before, we don't want gimmicky solutions. We want to try to find real differentiated pieces, whether it's exposure or structure or concept, whatever it may be. And I think that's really what we're trying to do is give you differentiated products. As we talked about a second ago, there's this tremendous need for these tools and levers within a portfolio. And I think trying to figure out ways to get access to those is the grand question. We always try to ask ourselves, what doesn't exist in the market or what does exist, but structurally is incomplete or obsolete, and looking at ways to kind of improve on those. As far as the roadmap, we've got some really exciting stuff coming up. Again, we're not trying to throw a bunch of product at the market and see what fits. This is not a spaghetti at the wall type situation, but we've got a really unique strategy coming out with return on leadership, which is this. I think every advisor knows that there is this need to figure out how companies are led in order to kind of estimate what the future will bring. And they've figured out a way to take the subjective and turn it into a quantitative metric. So that'll be more core exposure. We've got IVES power and infrastructure. AI is the play of the century, but I think compute and power are going to be the two bottlenecks and limitations. And so we're going to look at both thematic and core, but again, trying to kind of keep that rudder of what's different, what's structurally unique, what do advisors in the retail market want to put in their portfolios to add value for their clients.
As the ETF market continues to mature, where do you see the most compelling new product opportunities in the next few years?
I think the market is evolving so quickly that it's almost up to the imagination of the sponsor. The ETF wrapper and the 40 Act structure is so flexible and has so many different things that we can put into it and so many advantages structurally from a tax standpoint that I think it's going to be a continuation of the thematic ETFs. I think we're going to continue to get more and more unique slices. I think with the way that technology is advancing, there's always new pillars popping up and things that you can get targeted exposure to. I think structured products are going to become a more and more ingrained piece of kind of the ETF complex. It's almost like we're adding complexity to very simple instruments to give investors these return profiles that used to only be available to large institutions that could create giant structured products. And we can now deliver them in this liquid tradable vehicle. I mean, it's a beautiful structure. And I think we're going to see more and more of those. Defined outcomes, I think will continue to proliferate, adding income. We've seen what the auto callable space has done, and I think those kind of products will continue to grow and get more and more esoteric and complex. And I think alternatives are going to continue to rise. That is kind of, I think, the next untouched space within these liquid options. And there's a lot to figure out, whether it's liquidity mechanisms or how the underlying components work. But again, advisors in the retail market are looking for very specific things now. And so I think figuring out how to access those very specific things in ways that are understandable and don't have traps and that can operate as hedges and can, I think most specifically, continue to operate the way that they're supposed to in different market conditions. And one of the issues we're seeing is we've only had a couple market conditions really for the last 4 or 5 years as all these ETFs have come out. And so I think building in more risk-based structures, the market can only be in a bull run for so long, and really looking at strategies that will do well through volatile periods will be increasingly important. But again, it's a really exciting time for ETFs. I think that the sky's the limit, and I think we're going to continue to push the envelope.
I agree with your sentiment. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a lot of fun.
Thanks, Cullen. Thank you to Wedbush Fund Advisors for sponsoring this episode and to all of you for watching. To watch prior episodes and to see news from the ETF industry, visit us at etftv.net. Thank you.